Hey everyone. Sure your cameras are on. All right. Cameras, turn them on. I see you. I see you, Kelly. How are you? Ed, kick her out. She already licensed. She's already licensed. Anyway. All right. So make sure you guys have your camera on so it counts towards your 75 hours. Very, very important. And pointing at you. All right. So, I see that there's no questions. Mr. Badur, you told me that you were going to be like Nina, right? You're going to be my evening class Nina. Come on. I'll drop questions. I need 1,000 questions so I can start. All right, if anybody has any questions, all jokes aside, if anybody has any questions regarding the previous chapters, make sure you drop them now so I can address before we start chapter 7 and chapter 8. Okay? Tina, did the books come in? Yes, I have the books since I think I announced a day and a half ago. The books were mailed out to whoever had ordered them already with shipping. So they were mailed out yesterday, and you should receive it by tomorrow. Sorry, I'm just checking messages. Anyway, you should be receiving them over next either tomorrow or next day. Okay. Anyway, we do have, I think right now we have 10 books, nine books available. If anybody wants it, obviously let me know. I'll send the books. I'll send you a link for you to purchase the books. You can either pick them up here, or we can ship it to you. So let us know. Oh, hold on, we have less books because somebody came here to steal one. Right, Ed? You got yours? All right. All right, cool. So we're going to talk about leasing today. The chapters are leasing and then land use planning and control. There are no questions. We're going to move on to leases. We did talk briefly about it. We talked about we talked about leasehold estates and we talked about freehold estates, right? Under leasehold estates, we already briefly talked estate for years, period to period, and so on. So now we're going to talk about actual lease contracts. Now, a lease is both an instrument of conveyance and a contract between the principal parties to uphold certain covenants and obligations. Now, what does this mean? Instrument of conveyance. I think by now everybody should know this. What does it mean, instrument of conveyance? Instrument of conveyance. What does it mean? All right, Joel wrote deed. Okay, the deed is a type of instrument of conveyance. But what does instrument of conveyance mean? Or let me ask you a different way. What does conveyance mean first? Conveyance, what does it mean? Transfer. Perfect. Transfer. Perfect. Yep. There you go. What does instrument mean? All right. Okay, transferable document. Okay. So, as Joel wrote, and as, let's see, Brandon wrote, is literally document, putting it all together, of transfer. Perfect. Document of transfer. Okay? Because a conveyance is a transfer, transferring to somebody. Okay? Document of transfer. Now, it says that the lease is both a document of transfer and a contract. Okay? So, why is a contract? It's a contract because there's two or more parties agreeing to something, right? So an agreement is a contract, right? So two or more parties are agreeing to something. What are they agreeing to? They're agreeing to a transfer of a property. Now, is this a full transfer of rights or a partial transfer of rights? Let me know. Is it a full transfer of rights or partial? Partial. Very good. Because what they get is everything called a leasehold estate, but not the legal title. So if they don't get the legal title, then the tenant does not have the right to sell the property. The tenant has all other rights. They have the right to enjoy. They have the right to possess. They have the right to occupy. Okay. They have the right to use it in any legal manner. So legally, right? But they do not have the right of alienation. Wait, alienation, weird words. Did we talk about alienation already? We did? All right. So if we talked about alienation, you should know. So Lula, correct, bundle of rights. But if we talk about alienation, that's the only right that we don't have because we are not the legal owner of the property. So we don't have the right to alienation. What is that right? What is the alienation right? Let me know in the chat. What is the alienation right? What does it mean, alienation right? Come on, you're shaking your head like we talked about alienation. So what is alienation right? What does it mean to be an alien? Remember that first. What does it mean to be an alien? So the rights we had talked about before, but I want to know what alienation is. So an alien or alienation is having a foreigner or an outsider, right? So somebody from the outside. So alienation is bringing. Let's see here. Came from far away. Came swimming. That was a good one, Ed. So an outsider, foreign, or so on. So alienation is to bring other people in the property. So if I own the property, remember Tina owns the property and Tina was selling the property to Francesca. That was the example I gave. Okay, alienation was Tina is the legal citizen of the property, while Francesca was the alien until Francesca purchased. So while you're an outsider, you're an alien, you're foreign to the land. You got it? So alienation is the right to gift or sell the property. So Tina being the owner of record, for instance, in my example yesterday, Tina being the owner of record, Tina was the one with the right to sell or gift the property. She had the right of alienation. Once Francesca took over, Francesca will be the new owner or citizen of the land with the full bundle of rights. What bundle of rights? The right to enjoy, to possess, to occupy, to use legally, and to now sell the property. So Francesca before did not have any of these rights. She was an alien. Now that she's the owner of the property, she can sell or gift the property whenever she wants. You guys good? So alienation is the rights that tenants don't have. The tenants cannot sell or gift the property. All right? Again, guys, don't forget to keep your cameras on. Very, very, very important. I want to make sure you get all the credits that you deserve for being here. Okay? So that's why we say as a conveyance, so transfer, a lease conveys an interest called a leasehold estate, right? And does not convey legal title to the property. For this reason, a leasehold is also called a less than freehold estate. It gives you some rights, but not all the rights. Because freehold, you have the full bundle of rights. Leasehold, you have less rights. So it's also called less than freehold. Now, what types of freehold estates do we have? We covered them already briefly. Under freehold estates, leasehold estates, so tenants, involve tenants, leasehold estates, there's estate for years, there's estate from period to period, there's estate at will, or estate at sufferance. Estate means asset or possession of something, right? That could be yours or you have the rights to. In this case, as a tenant, you have what's called personal property. Your lease is personal property. I do not own the walls, but I own everything that's inside and the document that's called a lease. So it's personal property. So I do have an asset or an estate. Now, I can occupy the property for a definite period of time or on a renewal period with no end. You guys remember this? Right? That's from period to period or periodic estate. Correct, Lula. Yep. So the only one that's more complicated, and I always, again, stop at this, is this one. Estate for years. And when you see estate for years, being the most complicated is because estate for years sounds like you have a rent or a lease that's going to last a very long time. And unfortunately, it's quite the opposite, right? It could be for a long time, but it could be for 1 week. It could be for 3 days, right? It could be for 1 day. An estate for years, again, the most complicated one, has a specific term. Specific term. What does that mean? It means you have a check in and you have a check out. I'm going to repeat this a million times every time it shows up, estate for years. There's a start and there's an end date. Correct. It's a specified period of time. Lula, why do they call it for years? Great question. Great question. Why is an apple and not an orange? It's whatever they named it. It makes no sense to me, right? Maybe at the time it made sense for them, right? And we just got used to it. But yes, estate for years is the most complicated one. There's a specific lease term. For instance, if you guys go to an Airbnb and you stay there for 3 days, 1 week, whatever, right? What you need to remember for this purpose, what you need to remember is that you go in on Friday, as an example, on Friday until 9 p.m. you can check in. And then on Sunday, by 11 a.m., they're giving you a call and saying, hey, 12 p.m. check out, right? So guess what? That's an estate for years, right? This is a definite estate. It's called for years or definite. Don't ask me why. but it should have just been definite. It's not infinite, it's definite. So it's finite, it stops. So there's a specific start, there's a specific end, period. So if I tell you, sorry, if I tell you right now I have a 1-year lease, what kind of lease is this? I have a 1-year lease. What kind of lease is this? Let me know in the chat. And if you're watching on YouTube, let me know as well. I have a 1-year lease. If they ask you this in the state exam, 1-year lease, what kind of lease is this? It's in the state for years, not from period to period. It's 1 year. So I'm telling you, what I'm telling you is, I'm telling you, it ends in 1 year from now. It's a 1-year lease. So unless we renew, it's a 1-year lease. What if I tell you, okay, what if I tell you a 6-month lease? What kind of lease is this? 6-month lease. It's still in the state for years. What if it's a 1-week lease? You have to understand what I'm trying to say here is there's a definite period. It's 1 week, it's 1 month, it's 6 months, it's 1 year. It's a definite period of time. If I tell you you're on a month to month, it means you're paying me in installments and it keeps on renewing as long as you pay and as long as I don't complain and as long as you don't ask for that, tell me that you're going to leave, we're going to keep on going. So from period to period automatically renews. Period to period automatically renews. Okay? So these are the two basic leases that we have. It's either we define the period of time that you're going to stay, so check in, check out, you have a 1-year lease, or hey, as long as you pay, you keep on going. You guys got it? I know it can get confusing all because of this bad boy right here for years, right? You get confusing, but this is the definite period of time. All right, Ahmed says, so you take my payments and I don't re-sign my agreement, the tenant is protected. What are you talking about in this one? Let's say the 1 year ended. Well, depending on what the lease says, it could convert to another year. It's like you could have a renewal clause. It could convert to another year. It could convert to a month to month, right? A lot of these 1 year leases, what happens is they expire. So if they expire, you are now automatically on a month to month basis. If you're on a month to month basis, after 1 year and 1 month, what can I do? I can go to you and say, hey, Ahmed, in 30 days or in 1 month, I need the property. Get out. Right? Your 1 year lease protection is gone. The same way the reverse. If you decide to leave 3 months into the lease, I'm protected as a landlord for up to a year. That means I can sue you for the difference. You understand? So it's like a protection both ways. That's why we should always have something in writing that stipulates the terms of the lease. Okay? All right, cool. Cheryl got it. Perfect. All right. Again, this is the most complicated one because these two are very easy. These two are very easy. Estate at sufferance or estate at will. As the name says, one, you know what? I got no problems with you. I'll let you stay there here for as long as you want. Just pay. That's it. So you're making payments. There's no definite end date. It keeps on going. Much like the period to period, right? And then there's the estate at sufferance, where I'm suffering as a landlord because I told you to leave and you're still here. Or because you said you're going to leave and you're still here. So I'm suffering. So imagine this. Remember I said Airbnb or hotel or resort, whatever? You check in on Friday, you're supposed to check out on Sunday. Is it possible that Sunday comes, we call you up with that courtesy call that's not requirement? Sunday comes and we go like, hey, let's see, Daniela, I'm going to call you, Daniela. I'm going to say, hey, your room 205, just to let you know, checkout is at 12, right? And Daniela goes like, oh, wow, you know, Bruno, I didn't pay attention to the time. Can I stay a little bit longer? Is there any way I can stay a little bit longer? If the landlord, so hotel or Airbnb or whatever, allows you to stay a little bit longer, you're there at will. No problem, right? So we gave you an extension. Okay, no problem, right? Usually, there's no end. In this example, obviously, when we're talking about a hotel, obviously I'm going to extend. I'm going to allow you until 4 o'clock, for instance, right? So there's an end. But you're there at will. I allowed you to stay there, okay? I'm not even charging you extra. I allowed you to stay. But if I tell you, Daniela, no, because you're supposed to leave at 12, because at 12:05, the maids are there to clean up, and by 3 p.m., I have somebody else to move in. If I tell you that you need to get out, and you don't, now I'm suffering because you're still there. I have a tenant to move in, and you're still there. I have a problem. You understand? So I can immediately evict you because you're there without consent. You got it? At sufferance, I allow you, and there's no specified lease term. At will, I'm sorry. And at sufferance, no, without consent. You're there without my permission. Okay? Now, the legal essence of a valid lease is that it conveys an exclusive right to use and occupy a property for a limited period of time in exchange for the rent. So, the unit is yours. I cannot co-occupy with you. I'm the landlord, you're the tenant. I cannot co-occupy with you unless we made that agreement, right? Right, and then it could be called like a marriage or something. But we made that agreement. Other than that, the unit is yours, and I'm seized of the unit. I cannot occupy. I cannot go in without your permission because that's your personal property from the door in. You got it? Your personal property from the door in, unless there's an emergency. Okay? And in exchange for me allowing you to occupy, I expect you to pay me. That's it. And at the end, you must return the property to me. Okay? To be very clear, I already mentioned this as well. The difference between leaseholds and freeholds, the biggest difference between them is that leasehold estates are distinguished from freeholds because of their temporary nature. You see, a freehold, the property is yours and you might be able to stay there forever, right? Or for a lifetime. Where a leasehold, as it says lease, it's a rent, so you're there for temporary use. Could be a long-term lease, sure, but you're temporary. All right. Tenants' rights and obligations on the next page, page number 2. Tenants' rights and obligations. A lease conveys a leasehold interest, or estate that grants the tenant the following rights to use the lease term, during the lease term: possession, use, enjoyment, and even profits. If it's a business, for instance, you're entitled to profits of whatever business you conduct in the property or on the property. The tenant, like I said, has a sole right to occupy, so exclude people, right? Use the premises without interference from outside parties, including the landlords. I cannot go into the property, right? We just said that. Unless, of course, there's an emergency and or I gave you enough notice to go in. Sorry, you guys can hear me? All right, something just happened here, so I just want to make sure you can hear me. All right. Mainly, usually residential, they don't allow profits, like roommates and all that stuff. No. Usually residential, they don't. And if you're thinking about, for instance, Airbnb, there's this people, they are advertising how to make money in Airbnb without owning properties, right? Not all leases allow you to sublease. And an Airbnb, when you're the tenant, that's what it's considered, subleasing. So you got to make sure that the terms of the lease are clear. Okay, so no, in residential, most of the times, no, cannot. Well, how about selling items, products, or depends on the terms, right? That's more for commercial. Residential, what products are you selling? Hopefully, Ahmed, you're talking about legal products, right? Because I mean, the same. Commercial, selling products, unless it's like Avon or something like that, I don't see what are the products you're talking about. Cheryl said yes. I don't know if it's about the products or what she's saying yes to. uh, Lots of people are getting food during COVID and getting fined. Okay, that's different. That's health regulations, right? Or not having a business license with your municipality, especially with food. You got to be very careful with that. So that has nothing to do with the landlord. When we're talking here about the profits from the use, when we talk about the profits from the use, this is the landlord allowing you to collect money for the conduct of your business. Now, how is your business approved to run in that particular town? Like for us to be here, we need to be approved by the city of Newark because that's where we are, right? We're approved by the state already, but the city of Newark for occupancy, like we had 30 people here as an example, for occupancy, city of Newark has to allow us. You guys understand? So those are different things. Being able to run a business and have profits from it has nothing to do with the landlord, right? Directly. But if it's something that's competing, and that's some of the examples are here, if it's something that's competing, I cannot put a kiosk in front of your retail store saying that I'm going to sell something that you guys are selling over there. So technically, you're entitled to those profits. Oh, Cheryl, I'm sorry. Then there must be like a few seconds delay. So yes, you could hear me. Great. Anyway, Ahmed, you're gonna stop cooking? So no more Quiznos at your house? All right, fine. Look, I'm 100% with that. Like, it's just sad. It's just sad, and no offense to anybody, but it's just sad that it takes a quarantine for you to realize I need a side hustle, right? Most people are so complacent with I got a 9 to 5, right? And then when that 9 to 5 is not there, they go like, oh my God, what am I gonna do, right? You should always have something to add on, and I'll tell you why. Because when you go retire, when you guys go retire, you're gonna have Social Security only, if any, right? And you need to remember something. Social Security, it's something you should have as addition to your retirement income. It should not be your income. Some people are retiring with $800 a month for their Social Security in New Jersey. Like, where can you survive with $800 a month in New Jersey? Where? You understand? So definitely have a side hustle, and you guys are here. I think that's part of what you're doing, right? Getting into real estate, getting involved in real estate, is to get either a side hustle or a full replacement of your current income, right? And I applaud you for that because you're taking initiative. That's great. Some of you are not giving up, and I love that. I have some people here listening in right now that keep on pushing through, and that's great because giving up, that would be failure, right? So taking the steps to keep on pushing and I'm going to do this, that's very important, all right? So definitely remember, 9 to 5 pays bills, but not retirement. 9 to 5 lets you live while you can. But when you get to retirement, you're going to outlive that money real quick, right? So again, I applaud you for what you guys are doing right now. Next, the lease determines, we talked about obligations. So the lease has to explain what the obligations are for the tenant. That's right, Cheryl. Residual income is very, very important. Yep, absolutely. And I'm not telling you real estate is going to be the residual income, because real estate as a realtor is a pay for service. So just like your 9 to 5, if you don't work, you don't get paid. Unfortunately, that's what it is. But it is a nice, and the only reason why I'm saying that is because you guys are here in real estate. But it is a nice step tool to get to where you need to be. So nice way to make the extra money so you can buy an income property. And then your residual comes from there. Or from any business that you guys create. That's up to you. Except cooking at Ahmed's house. Okay? Just saying. Right? That's he's getting too many complaints and he has to shut down soon. Anyway. Landlord's rights and obligations. So the lease has to stipulate the rights and obligations for the landlord as well. If there's a death of a tenant or the landlord, a valid lease creates obligations that survive the death of the landlord or the tenant. All right, Brandon is asking me to ask Ahmed about his green sauce. You just said green sauce. Is it spicy? If yes, sold. I want it. All right? Sold. If it's spicy, love that. Okay? So, being that said, right here, you see there's an address. You're always welcome to drop it off. Bring food while you're at it. That's it. Ooh. Okay. Tina is asking, where's Ahmed? He looks beautiful. Where he is. That's a virtual background. I thought you were talking about him. That's a virtual background. That's his living room. As far as the spicy sauce, he says, after graduation, I'll send to all in the class. Perfect. Perfect. I mean, if nobody wants it, I'll keep them all. I love hot sauce. Just saying. Tasty stuff, says Brandon. Cool. You guys are tag teaming. If this is the way you guys are going to do real estate business, perfect. Right? There you go. All right. We got hot sauce lovers. Perfect. We're gonna have some meals here. I got here a realtor, Super Mario. That's what I call him. He loves spicy food too, and I always have like 3, 4, 5, 6 different hot sauces here. So I think we're gonna have an open house just for food. Forget real estate. All right, and if you're on YouTube, you can join as well. Just join us here. Next, it's a conveyance of leased property, so it transfers from one person to another. The principal parties to a lease must be legally able to enter into an agreement. That means they have, in the state of New Jersey, as an example, 18 years of age or older. They have sanity, right? They're of sound mind, and there's a few other requirements that we'll talk about later. The lease must include the property description, must give exclusive possession to the tenant unless otherwise stipulated in the lease. Legal and permitted use, so what you can or cannot do. Consideration always means money. Consideration always means money. Offer and acceptance, that means I offered something and you accepted. Obviously, that means we agree to the terms of the lease. So when it comes to offer and acceptance, like any regular contract, we understand the terms of the lease, right? And both parties, landlord and tenant, accept fully every single term of the lease. Guys, I have a lot of cameras that are off. Make sure, if this is the first time you're doing this chapter, make sure your cameras are on so it counts towards your hours. All right, notice that this one's not highlighted. Signatures. Out of all of them, this one's not highlighted. Why not? Why didn't I highlight signatures? Who can tell me? Go ahead, tell me. Why did I not highlight signatures? Because all that's in yellow or highlighted, in yellow or green, are requirements. Okay? But signatures, I did not highlight. Brandon says because sometimes there's an auto renew. Listen, if there's an auto renew, it better be a signature somewhere that I committed to that auto renew. Okay? Just like that gym membership. If the gym membership does not have my signature, they cannot auto renew. I'll get rid of it so quick. Right? Without reading. Ed says because there's an obligation. Okay. Anybody else? Blue says tenants don't have to sign. Don't they have to agree to the terms? The landlord here has the upper hand. I'm even thinking about the evil laugh of the landlord, about the power that the landlord has. The upper hand. Yeah. All right. Here's the thing. You guys never heard about verbal leases or oral leases or contracts or agreements? The shake of a hand. Thank you so much. All right. Signatures are not a requirement, especially if it's verbal. Where are we going to sign? Okay? But there's a uniform lease agreement. Yep, Cheryl, perfect. Oral agreements are valid. Sorry, I didn't see it on time. And that's what it says here, right after. Oral versus written. So there's a uniform standard for leases across the United States, right? But one of the things is verbal contracts are valid in most of the states. Verbal contracts. Now, being valid and being enforceable are two different things. If it's in writing, it's stronger, easier to enforce. If it's oral or verbal contract, it's still valid, but not as easy to enforce. So, every state has their own rule as far as when must it be in writing. Okay? When must it be in writing? Now, traditionally, their rule is that it has to be at least 1 year. Okay? At least 1 year. State of New Jersey, you got to be at least 3 years to be in writing. But when we get to the state specific, I'll address those. Let's see here. Tina. But isn't an oral agreement not valid because there's no proof? Okay, cool. So in every state has something called statute of fraud. And most of them, including us in New Jersey, we amended in 1996, we amended the statute of frauds to allow oral contracts to be enforced if there was clear and convincing evidence. So statute of frauds, right? So as long as there's clear and convincing evidence in the state of New Jersey, that's how it is. As long as there's clear and convincing evidence that I intended to rent to you and you intended to rent for me, and this was the agreements we've made, then it's enforceable. If there's no proof, that's where, like Tina's saying, that's where it becomes tricky to enforce something that's verbal. So with that being said, should a lease or any contract, forget leases, any agreement, any contract, should they be verbal or should they be in writing? Okay? Now, you don't have to answer that, but the point is, because of this exact thing that Tina wrote, it's valid. It's not valid. It is valid, but it's difficult to enforce because there might be no proof. So an oral agreement is valid. You just might not be able to enforce it. That's the problem, right? And that's the reason why everybody should have it, whatever agreement is, should have in writing. Okay? Next. Rent and secure deposit. Rent stipulates the time, place, manner, and amount of rent of payment, obviously. It defines a grace period that is allowed and states the penalties if you go beyond the grace period. And then the lease may also call for a security deposit. Look at what it says. May. Is a lease a requirement? I mean, is a security deposit a requirement on the lease? Is it a requirement? Do we have to have a security deposit? And the answer is, every time you see this word, means no, it's not required, but it's advisable. Okay, so in this case, should we have a security deposit? Yes. For what? To protect the landlord against losses from property damage or tenant's default. Okay, simple. All right, so Cheryl just wrote. Sorry. Cheryl just wrote, if a landlord has been accepting money, that proves some type of agreement was in place. Yeah. So, again, if there's clear and convincing evidence, it will be either witnesses. In this case, Cheryl gave a great example, which is if money was accepted, then obviously there are some terms in place. We might not know the details of the terms, but it's the same thing as going to court and saying, hey, landlords, did you ever accept monies? Did you ever this? Did you ever that? Do you guys have an agreement? Right? If the landlord slips on any of these by saying no, and then the tenant has some type of proof of the payments, right? Then who's going to lose in this lawsuit? The landlord, right? That's why, again, for a landlord to protect him or herself, for a tenant to protect him or himself, no, yes, Cheryl, that's an actual example. She was saying that was a question. That's an actual example. So for a landlord to protect him or herself, or the tenant, put everything in writing. And you know why a lot of landlords don't put it in writing? Because they're going to collect cash. And collecting cash, do I need to report to the IRS? If I collect cash, do I need to report to the IRS? Joel is saying yes. I learned my lesson. That's because he's doing with a smile, with like the grin smile, not like smile like I'm happy, like, yeah. I learned my lesson. Ahmed says, no way. I'm not telling anybody about my sauces. My green sauce is being sold for cash. IRS does not know about it. Anyway. And Tina says you should. All right, Cheryl, you're saying the delay is long. So I'm gonna say this: check your watch right now or your phone. I'm saying what I'm saying right now at 6:24 and 25 seconds. So let me know when you get this message, what time you have. So I have an idea of the delay, and I can address it that way as well. Okay. Should you report to the IRS? The answer is yes, guys. There's legal deductions. There's no need to hide. There's legal deductions for everything. There's no need to hide. And I'll tell you why you shouldn't hide money. Because later on, you want to get approved for a mortgage. That's the biggest challenges we've been having, guys. You want to get approved for a mortgage? If you deduct so much or hide so much, then you don't make enough money to buy a house, right? You want to get approved for a car. You want to get approved for a business loan. You want to, whatever it might be. If you're hiding, later on when you need, you don't have it. All right? So instead, what you guys need, instead of hiding, what you need is a good CPA that knows how to legally apply for all deductions and benefits that you should qualify for. Okay? Simple. Joel, that's why a lot of people don't get qualified. Yeah, all day long. We just had this issue not too long ago, this week. A couple days ago. Just had this issue. Cash. Great. And then you want to buy a house? Yeah, but I have a bunch of money. But you don't have all the money. If you don't have all the money, you need financing. If you need financing, you need to show that you make money. Simple. All right, it's been a minute and a half and still no answer from Cheryl. Let's that backed up. That's right. Joel doesn't make you crow. All right. By the way, very important, and I'm just messing with Ahmed. I'm going to keep on messing with him regarding the sauce. Let's say you're turning that into a business. I have somebody I know. Hey Ruth, how are you? You just joined us, okay? I have somebody I know that actually she cooks, so she caters for other companies. So she caters for other companies, and she now created home brands of sauces as well, right? So one of the things that she was asking me about 2 years ago was she needed to rent a space so she can cook, and one of the things that she's doing is also giving classes to children. So she turned it into an aftercare type of program as well, and she's filming it, so doing like the YouTube experience, now the whole TikTok as well, and she's booming with the whole sauce, the sauce that she has, right? But for her to get qualified for the space that she now has, right? It was hell. One, it's for a business, right? And two, you would have to give personal guarantee if the business doesn't have enough. How can you give personal guarantee if even your own stuff you're putting cash and cash and cash and hiding, right? If you want to grow, like Joel was saying right now, if you want to grow, talk to a CPA today, well, not today, tomorrow, to figure out, hey, this is my ultimate goal. I'm opening up a business, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. How can I get to this situation without having to pay too much taxes? That's it. All right. A good CPA will help you. Bottom line, that's what I'm telling you. A good CPA will help you pay less taxes legally, not tax evasion, because that's what hiding money is. Not tax evasion, but how to reduce it legally. All right. Cheryl says 624, no secondhand. Okay. Maybe I typed too slow. I don't know, Cheryl. I just want to make sure that when I'm asking, so I asked my partner as well. He just said 5-second delay, but it could be also internet. Like Ruth is saying, just refresh it. It could be the internet on your end that is causing problems. I know today is not the best day with the rains and all that stuff. Could be causing problems. Okay. But if there's a huge delay, refresh it. And again, I just want to make sure I address everybody. All right, next, going back to this, security deposit. The lease does not require a security deposit, but a security deposit is created to protect the landlord against losses from property damage or tenant's default, like not paying the rent. Now, state law regulates handling of a security deposit, where it is deposited, and whether the tenant receives interest on the deposit. So when we get to state law, I'll explain that better. But security deposit, again, is for damages or for losses, rent collection losses. The lease must include the lease term as well. Repairs and maintenance, if the tenant is responsible, if the landlord is responsible, the lease must state clearly who is responsible for repairs. And the other thing is, I was talking about Airbnb or even having roommates. There's a clause. Every single lease has a clause regarding subleasing. Subleasing is when we give a portion of our space or the lease to somebody else. Assignment is when we give up the whole lease altogether. So let's say, for instance, that I have a 3-bedroom. I rented a 3-bedroom, so I have one room. And then I talk to Joel and I talk to Brandon and I say, hey guys, here's the thing. I have a 3-bedroom. I was planning on turning one of the rooms into an office space, and then the other room was going to be my personal gym. Things got tight. I could not afford to do it all by myself. What do you guys think? You want to join forces? You want to come and rent the rooms with me? If you say yes, then that's called subleasing. Unless I add you to the original lease. So then I talk to the landlord and say, hey, landlord, let's say the landlord is Tina. I go like, hey, Tina, I know it was just me, but I couldn't do it. So I brought Joel and Brandon. Is that okay with you? If Tina says okay and puts it on the lease, The three of us are now responsible. But if not, then it's called subleasing. And when it's called subleasing, there's the lessor, which is the landlord, right? There's the lessee, / sublessor or sublandlord, I'm sorry. And then there's the sub lessee. So right here we have something that's called a sandwich lease. Okay? Now, why is this so important to know? Sandwich lease, lessor, sublessee, and there's this person in the middle, which is me in this example. Why is this important? Because these people's responsibility here are to me. My responsibility right here is to the lessor. So let's say Brandon and Joel don't pay me. Can I go to the lessor? Can I go to Tina and say, hey, Tina, listen, here's the thing. Remember, I brought some people over to help out, right? Tina's going to say, like, yeah, I remember that. Right, cool. So here's the problem. They didn't pay me. So it's a little tough for me to pay this month. What should Tina say? Tina should go like, oh, I understand you and I appreciate you telling me, or say, hey, just want to let you know, I got no problem with them not paying you, but I do have a problem with you not paying me. Because in my lease, right, between Tina and me, Bruno, in my lease, your name is the only name there. So if there's sublessees or roommates, as we call it, there's sublessees and they don't pay you, that's on you. That's what Tina should tell me. That's on you. Remember, guys, this is a business. This is a business. Renting is a business. Okay? So, could Tina try to help me? Sure. Does Tina have to help me? No, because the agreement is between these two people, not all these people. So these are off the hook when it comes to the landlord. Okay? Very important. Right here. A sublessor remains primarily liable for the original lease. The subtenant is liable only to the sublessor. So to me, if you guys don't pay me, I'm still solely responsible or fully responsible for paying Tina. You guys got it? Give me a thumbs up if you're good. Great. Because there's a difference between that and assignment. Assignment is literally saying, there's a lessor, there's a lessee, yep, that's right. Perfect, Ruth. So there's a lessor and there's a lessee. And I'm going to call Tina and say, hey, Tina, things are tough. I don't want to breach the lease because I still have like 6 months left. But are you okay, Tina? Are you okay if I bring Brandon and Joel along and they take over? They take over the lease, right? Now that's a different scenario. I ask Tina, right? And if Tina's okay for them to take over, then I'm no longer around, right? And now it's Joel and Brandon as the lessees. Now, question. Here, I was fully responsible in the sublease. I was fully responsible and Brandon and Joel were not, right? Here, I'm off the hook, right? You guys freeze? No answer? Am I off the hook in this scenario? Yes? No? Maybe? Let me know in the chat. Am I off the hook? I'm the lessee, and I couldn't pay anymore. So I asked Tina to take over, to accept the takeover from Joel and Brandon. He didn't know. Did you change the lease agreements? If the landlord signs a new lease, is your name still on the lease? Very good questions, because that's what you need to know. Tina, why you're asking me? You're the landlord. Okay, so here's the thing. Because I was the original party, even though these people took over, right? They became the primary. That was really bad. Okay. They became the primary, and I became the secondary. Even though I'm no longer there, I was still the original person that was responsible for paying the rent. So I told Tina, I know you did a background check on me, and I said I was gonna go forward with the terms of the lease, right? So I'm sorry, it sucks, life happens, right? Why should Tina trust now Joel and Brendan? So Tina will tell me, no problem, I'll let them take over. But if they screw up, you screw up. I'm suing all three of you. All right? Here's the thing. When there's an assignor, which in this case is me, and an assignee, which is in this case Brendan and Joel, the assignee, them, Brendan and Joel, become primarily liable, while the assignor, which is the original tenant, remains secondarily liable. Yep. So Ruth, if they don't pay, it's not that I have to pay. So Ruth is asking, so if they don't pay, does the secondary have to pay? No. If they don't pay, all three of us get sued. Even though you haven't been there in months, you are the primary liability. Now, of course, during your lease term. If your lease term is over and Joel and Brendan stay there, you're out of the picture. That means Tina accepted either a renewal or extended the month to month or whatever. Now I'm out of it. You understand? But originally, who was there for 1 year? I was. 6 months later, can no longer pay. What do? Transfer to somebody else. For the remainder of the 6 months, I am responsible if they do not pay. So all of us get sued. All right, question from Ahmed. How can we remove the assignee? How can we remove? Very good question. So we talk about that in contracts, but there's something called novation. And nova, for my non-Latin speaking friends, nova means new. So instead of assignment, we do a novation. Novation is Tina would agree to create a brand new lease with Joel and Brendan. If it's a brand new lease, I'm out of the picture completely. So if they default, not my fault. Simple. But that will be novation. It's a brand new lease, new people. I have nothing to do with that. So let's recap real quick. Nope, no longer the assignor. I'm done. So, recap. In a sublease, there's a sandwich lease, which is in between, right? And that means that there's a lessor, so which is the landlord, and there's me, the lessee. And then I rent to my roommates, right? Or I divide the office space for other tenants, whatever it might be. So people that come after the original lease right here. If they don't pay me, I'm fully, primarily responsible for the payment to the landlord. Okay, that's a sublease. They're not liable at all. If it's an assignment, where I said, hey, landlord, I cannot pay, but they can, right? I pretty much step out and they step in, okay? But we did not clarify that they were the sole parties responsible. I stay with secondary liability because they took over primary liability. If it's a novation, it's just a brand new contract. Novation, that's it. I'm 100% out of the picture. It's now between the landlord and the new tenants. That means our contract is over. I'm out. You got it? So subleasing, full liability, assignment, partial liability, novation, no liability. That's pretty much how you can think of it. We go over that better in contracts later on. Improvement alterations. Every single lease also has a description of what you can improve or not, or alter or not. Usually, you can make some improvements to some extent. Like if it's a business, you're entitled to do what's called installation of trade fixtures. Trade fixtures are things we use for business. For instance, right behind the camera, I have a TV, which is where I have your faces, right? And here to my sides, I have two TVs, for whoever would sit here in the class would be able to see it. So I have a bunch of TVs all over the office, but I have other stuff that's attached to the walls. Now, these were installed for business purposes, okay? Because there are for business purposes, they allow me to remove. If I did not specify that it was for business purposes, like in a rental, a residential rental, then customarily the tenant improvements become the property of the landlord. So they become real estate, right? They're a fixture that becomes real estate instead of personal property. Okay, so unless we have something in writing, expressed agreement, that, yeah, go ahead, fix this in the house and let me know, right? Unless we have an express agreement, everything that's installed becomes the landlord's. Okay, so that's improvements and alterations. If you ever want to do something, change the current condition of the property, get the landlord's exclusive and express authorization. Yep, in writing, Tina. Perfect. And in writing. Yes, absolutely. Miguel, I'm gonna fire you. Miguel, you keep on interrupting my class and taking over, man. What's wrong with you? Miguel is doing reviews before his before the exam. That's what it is, right? All right. Miguel, you became Verona. That's what it is. I had a student in the previous class, Verona. Same thing. Every time she joins, even though I have the settings to mute all when joining, every time, I don't know how, every time Verona joined, she would, microphone would turn on. Miguel did that the second time already today. Unbelievable. Fabiola knows what I'm talking about. There you go. All right. Question from Ahmed. If you had wood flooring, if you add wood flooring to an apartment, originally was carpet, new apartments now have wood, can I take it when I'm leaving? Did you have authorization to do so? Was it in writing? So if the landlord knows that you have wood flooring, technically, can't. Technically, unless you have express agreement in writing, like Tina said, now it becomes property of the landlord. Do you want to rent from me? I have some houses that need hardwood flooring. Just saying. I had a tenant that did that to me one time. Like he oh, your tenant did that? Okay. I had a tenant that did that. He did new countertops in the kitchen, backsplash, right? Replaced the appliances because they wanted to have those instead of the I think we had white. No. We either had white or all black, one of those. And they wanted to have the shiny glossy look, the aluminum type of thing, right? They wanted that, right? The stainless, yeah, the stainless steel. But they wanted that thing, like, oh, it's so chic, it's so elite to have these things. I'm like, okay. When I saw it, he calls me, says, Bruno, come see what I did. I'm like, sure. He painted the apartment really nice. Shows me the kitchen. The floor is done really nice because he works in the floor. So he did. He cleaned it. He did like detail the floor. Now the words are skipping my mind. But anyway, he did everything to the house. Great, lovely. And then I see the actual kitchen. Backsplash, beautiful. Countertop, beautiful. New appliances, beautiful. And all I'm thinking is, thank you. That's all I was thinking, right? But no, later on, I did give him credit on the rentals. I did not say anything. He did not ask for anything, but he gave me the look like, yeah. You guys know the look? You ever done that look or were given the look? So he gave me the look like, pay me, right? And I'm like, I literally just said, oh, that's wow, that's really nice. That's really nice. Cool, good job, right? Appreciate it, right? And I walked away. I walked out of the house. Literally. I know he must have cursed me out for the next week or so until the end of the month. But then he paid me in full, and I started giving him every month. I started giving him credit for the rent. But what, you went and did something without asking me. That's what it is, you know? I appreciate it. If I was one of those really bad landlords, I would have just said thank you. And by the way, I even asked him, at one point I asked him, do you want to move to the first floor? Because this is really nice what you did here. You want to move to the first floor? I'll have them move up, right? So you could do the same thing downstairs. That's what it is. Anyway. All right, next. Options. Those are options they have. Anyway, option is a little different. What is option? An option, did you ever hear about rent to buy? Okay, did you ever hear rent to own? Right? Lease with option to buy. Okay. So in this scenario, it's not the same option. I'm going to explain it better in a second. Not the same option. But this is where we integrate options, all options, where it's rent to buy, rent to own, or lease with options. So your lease must include something that says, well, will it renew? Will you have the option to buy the property? So that's what it is. Will it renew the lease automatically? Would you buy the property? Is there anything else that comes with it in the future? So right now, this is what you're renting. This is what you're doing. You have the option to do something else later. So every time you hear options, usually in the state exam, it's related to option to buy or rent to buy, okay, or rent to own, which is exactly the same thing. Is where you are a tenant for X amount of months or years, and at the end of those months, you have the option to buy. Like leasing a car. When you lease a car, you test drive the car, and if you like the car, at the end of 3 years, you keep it, you buy it. You understand? So every time you see options, remember, rent to buy, rent to own, or lease with option. Just like leasing a car. You rent, and then later on, you have the option to buy or let go. Okay? All right, different types of leases. What do we have? We have gross lease. Sorry, hold on a second. Can you add a clause expressing percentage of prior funds to be used towards the purchase price? Okay, cool. So depending on the state, like state of New Jersey requires that some of those monthly payments, right? Some of those monthly payments are credited towards the purchase. So if the normal lease, for instance, the normal lease in the area was like $1,500 and you're charging $2 because you're giving the option to buy, then the $500 difference would have to be credited as down payments. Now, does it mean you have to put money aside? No, as a landlord, you don't have to put money aside, but you have to keep a record of how much money was paid so that at the end of the 3 years, when you, just like a car, guys, when you buy a car, when you go at the end with the option to buy, they credit some or all of your monthly payments towards the purchase. You don't pay full purchase price at the end, right? So they deduct your payments and credit towards the purchase. That's all it is. So in New Jersey, yeah. But every state is a little different. So you must know what the options are in that state. Here in New Jersey, where I'm at, yeah, we need to credit. And I learned that because when I started investing in real estate, my first type of investments were leases with option to buy. So leases with option to buy. And I was taught by somebody in West Virginia. Not that close to Jersey. So different type of state altogether. So I came and practiced that here and was fine and dandy until I got into one problem, because nothing lasts forever and nothing is perfect forever. It was great, right? Until I got to one problem, involved attorneys, and we figured it out amicably. But it got to the point where I realized by law that in New Jersey, we have to credit a portion or all of the monthly payments towards the down payment or the purchase price, one or the other. So that means that at the end, if they're buying for $300 and they already paid you $100,000, you credit the $100,000. They're buying for $200,000. That's the balance. Okay. All right. Next, leases. Different types of leases. We have gross lease. This is mainly for residential. We have net lease, mainly for commercial. And I said mainly, okay? So it's not only for commercial. We have percentage lease, which is mainly for retail. Okay? And then within these, there's, again, residential, commercial. There's ground lease, releasing land only. Ground lease, leasing land only. Okay? So these are the main ones for you to remember. Gross lease, residential, net lease, commercial, percentage lease for retails. So gross lease or full service lease. Okay? I said that gross lease right here is mainly for residential. Because in a gross lease, I pay the landlord $1,500 flat. I'm not responsible for taxes as a tenant. I'm not responsible for insurance, and I'm not responsible for maintenance. Okay? Gross lease, you, the landlord, deal with it. In a net lease, mainly for commercial, so office and industrial properties, net lease is I pay you $1,500, but I'm also responsible for a portion or all of the taxes, insurance, and maintenance of the building. So every time you hear triple net lease, that means net taxes, net insurance, and net maintenance. So Tim. So every time you see triple net leases, triple net, that means that the tenant is responsible for taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Whether it's all of it or part of it, that's a different story. Like where we are right now, we share the taxes, insurance, and maintenance with 4 other tenants. Okay? So it's split equally between everybody. You understand? I mean, equally according to the space that's used. So we use, I think, 4,000 or 3,000, no, 4,000 square feet, something around there. So we pay out of the 60,000, we pay based on the 4,000 square footage that we have. So we pay proportion. So it's divided between everybody. That's a net or triple net lease. So that means that the landlord passes through the actual property expenses. This is a net lease. Taxes, insurance, and operating expenses are transferred. The next one is percentage lease. Now, a percentage lease is just like a net lease. Why? Because I pay you $1,500, right? Plus taxes, insurance, and maintenance. But there's a twist here. There's a couple options. It's either, that's why I mentioned commercial usually, yeah. So it's either, in the percentage lease, it's either we charge you, instead of $1,500, we're going to charge you $1,200. So I'm going to help you, tenant, right? I'm going to help you. Or I'm going to charge you $1,500 and whatever is lowest of what I'm going to tell you in a second, whichever is lowest, right? Or greatest, right? Or a fixed percentage. So what does that mean? We are right here. And again, this is more for retail properties. As a landlord, I'm investing in your business. If you do good, right? If you do well, if your business is growing, I get a percentage, let's say 5% of your business. So whatever you do that month, that's going to be the rent. Or you pay $1,200, right? And 5% of gross sales. Or here's a percentage of rent or minimum rent, whichever is greatest. So again, yep, a lot of malls do that. It's retail. So what we're trying to do is, as a landlord, I'm investing in you. If you do well, I do well. If you suck at your business, I lose. Simple. It's almost like we become partners. Kind of. All right, you guys get it? Let me know if you have questions before I move forward. Make sure you have no distractions. Kick people out of your room. Saying. And make sure your cameras are on and pointing at you, please. Diana, tell him whoever it is you're studying. Put him in the cage. That's it. You can leave the dogs out and everybody else in the cage. All right, any questions before I move forward, guys? YouTube, questions, Zoom, questions. These are the three basic types of leases: gross lease, net lease, or percentage lease. Any questions? Nope? All right. So if no questions, the next one we have, there's residential lease, commercial lease, and so on, but the next one we have is ground lease. This is also known as a terra lease. We're leasing. Terra means land. Ground, land. You might see sometimes lot for lease. Sometimes you might see pad for lease. So these are different ways that you could see properties for lease, but they're all terra or tierra if you're in the Hispanic, right? Terra, Portuguese, ground, land, lot, pad. You're just leasing the surface, right? You're just leasing the surface, paying me $1,000 a month as an example for renting the surface, right? So this is to the landlord. And you, tenant, you are the one responsible for building this. You are the one responsible for building. I just gave you land. Pay me $1,000. Some places, $10,000. Some places, $100,000. Whatever. But the land is what you're getting. Whatever you put on it, it's on you. That's called a ground lease or terra lease. You want to use it as a car lot? Sure. But you want more examples? You wrote car lot, right? Mall. Ed, very good. Malls. Gas stations. Banks. Pharmacies. A lot of these properties that these people have are not owned by them. They're leased by them. Okay? Sometimes even manufacturing places, they build the warehouses, but it's a lease, it's not a purchase. So the difference is literally landlord is renting the land. That's it. The tenant builds whatever structure is approved. Landlord rents the land. Okay? Now, right here. Ground lease or land lease. These are primarily used in three circumstances. The owner wishes to leave the lease to lease raw land to an agricultural or mining interest. Unimproved property is developed, and either the owner wants to retain ownership of the land, or the developer or future users of the property do not want to own the land. So it's either I want to retain, or you're saying, no, we'll rent from you. We don't want to buy. Okay? So for tax purposes, most of the times. Or third option, the owner of an improved property wishes to sell an interest in the improvements while retaining the ownership of the underlying land. So it could also be, I have a building, that's the third option. I have a building I want to sell, right? I sell to you, it's already built, I want to sell, but I keep the rights to the land. Remember, we can sell rights separately, right? That's it. I sell you the building, but I keep the land. Okay? So this again is a ground lease, terra lease. Again, you don't find this in residential. You find this in commercial, in retail, manufacturing, right? So on. When you see the words proprietary lease, you guys remember condos and co-ops? Proprietary lease, condos and co-ops. A proprietary lease, that means you're the owner of stock in a co-op and you get a lease to occupy your unit. Okay? So proprietary lease and co-op. All right, we got all this. Default and termination. We're on the 7th page of this chapter. Default and termination. If there's a default by tenant, we do a suit for eviction. Notice I do not have highlighted because I want to focus more on the state specific. And we have a chapter for property management as well where we go over this again. Okay. If it's a default by a landlord, because the landlord is supposed to give you a property, it's supposed to give you a property that is habitable, right? Therefore, if it's damaged and causing potential injuries to your life, health, or safety, then you can leave. So you evict yourself, and that's a constructive eviction. You evict yourself, you leave. You said, hey, landlord, no water, it's been 3 days. Hey, landlord, no heat, it's been 3 days. Whatever, as an example, right? So if you don't fix, I either repair or I'll walk away. It's one or the other. So again, constructive eviction. Causes for lease termination. Why would you terminate a lease? There was a breach by either party. It expired. I gave you enough notice. It was an agreement between us, right? The property got destroyed for whatever reason, so it terminates the lease. Condemnation means that the government takes your property. You guys remember eminent domain? Right? So the government takes your property. That's condemnation. Foreclosure, landlords failed to pay the bills and got foreclosed upon, and then for whatever reason, like New Jersey has an anti-eviction act, includes a foreclosure portion. But if the tenant cannot prove that they were paying on time and that they're a good tenant, could you lose the property because of your rental because of foreclosure? Sure. Death of tenant or landlord could also result in the termination of the lease. Or you abandoned, you walked away. State of New Jersey, more than 7 days without any communication, then it's considered abandoned. but I still have to keep all your stuff for at least 30 days. Sucks, right? I still have to put everything in storage for 30 days. Right? Now, what is abandoned? It means that, okay, you went on vacation, let me know you're going on vacation. That's all. Because if you haven't paid and you're not there for a week or more, you abandoned. Simple. Okay? All right, and across the board, this is real quick. We're done with this chapter. Across the board, there's something called Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. All it means is that the state, nationwide, there's some type of standard understanding or agreement that every state tries to follow. That's all. All right? And then every state has their rights to make it stronger, make changes to it, and so on. So it aims to equalize and standardize the rights of the landlord or tenant, protect tenants from unethical practices, or prevent unfair, complex leases and their enforceability. All right? So again, I'm not going to go in much detail to this because it's not heavily tested or tested at all. Okay? But it shows your obligations. Once we get to the state portion, which will be tested, we'll talk about all this stuff again in detail. Okay? With that being said, guys, we're done with chapter 7. Does anybody have any questions before I end this chapter and move on to the next? Now, I'm going to tell you guys, I highly recommend, I know it's first week, right? But I highly recommend remove any distractions. Things are getting easier right now, easier to handle, I believe, right? But once we get to financing, once we talk about appraisals, and we talk about investments, things are getting really complicated. So, just saying, remove any distractions. You need to understand that you are in school, right? I appreciate your money, but I don't want your money. Let's put it like that. Don't waste it. Focus, be connected, ask questions, remove distractions. It's key, right? So, if there's no questions regarding this chapter, guys, I'm going to end this session for YouTubers. We will be back in roughly 10 minutes. It is now 7:09, so 7:10, let's put it. So 7:20, we will be back, okay? 10 minutes, we'll be right back, guys.